Okay, so let's take a look at the happy poses that you guys made real fast. It's kind of fun working with these little marionettes, these little puppets, right? One of the things that I said to a lot of people is to look at your poses in 3D. Look at it from the front, look at it in profile, and see how your understanding of what you've changes or what you've created changes. All right, let's take a look here. Bless you. Let's see what we got. We're not going to look at all of these. We've got some time considerations that we need to be sensitive of. But let's just take a look-see here. Or not. Remote desktop is choosing not to participate today. There we go. All right. So there's some good ones. Whose is this one? Who's this? Own it, Jepson. Great job. Take us on a little tour. Let's see it. It's working from this angle. Let's look at it from the side. Yeah, okay. So Jepson has done something pretty great here. There's a lot of really nice things to be aware of. But this actually starts our conversation about gravity and mass, okay? If you look very carefully, if you go back to that other angle, the pose starts to work a little bit here. We're getting some really great flexing of the spine. We got some really nice asymmetry in the arms up top. I love it. It's starting to work. It's starting to work. However, we always need to be mindful of mass, right? The weight of things. And how we pose our character has a direct relationship to how our audience understands how heavy these things are, right? Can you go back to the side for a second, Jepson? Okay, cool. So when we're starting to plot and figure out the center of our mass and the gravity, there's a couple landmarks that we should be mindful of. Now these rules are fast and loose, okay, but they're a good starting point for our conversation about where to put certain anatomical features to create the illusion that this is a balanced character, right? That this thing isn't just going to fall over and kind of pancake on the concrete, right? The first is the head, way up here. The head, the hips, and the ankle. If I was to draw a center line going right down the middle of our character, the middle of our head, the middle of our hips, and the middle of our ankles should all be sitting very, very close to that center line, okay? As is, if looking at our character from the side here, how does it feel? Is this character going to stand straight up and down, or is he going to fall over? Yeah, he's going to fall backwards. If you look at the head, the hips and the ankle, those are pretty close to one another, but man, look at the center of the head. It's way off the ankle. Yeah, right about there, okay, which is making it feel like the entire weight of this character is being pulled backwards, and that this character is moments, if not milliseconds away from falling over, okay? By moving the shoulders forward and rotating the hip up some, it's going to place that center of mass right down there on that center line, okay? Now, what I'm not saying is that the entirety of our character has to be lined up along those three anatomical features. I'm saying that the hips, the head, and the ankles generally need to be in a straight line for us to create a balanced, stable character. The chest can be popped out or popped in. The arms can be where they want, posed and to create whatever it is, the emotion that we're after. But at the very least, we need to begin by having the head, the hips, and the ankle generally, like I said, these are kind of loosey-goosey rules, but generally pretty lined up with one another. Now, the other thing that we need to be mindful of, and one of the other considerations that helps very quickly establish a good balance and sense of mass, which might go around to the front a little bit, Jepson, or our feet, okay? I think I've mentioned a couple times here that my wife used to teach dance, okay? And when you're teaching ballet to 2- and 3-year-olds, you have to come up with some pretty catchy ways for them to understand and remember these ideas. And of course, in ballet, their feet are often like this, right? And she came up with called pizza feet. Make your feet, create a pizza slice in the center down there, right? And that always just stuck with me, pizza feet, right? And it's something that we as animators do all the time, right? Do we ever stand with our feet perfectly parallel to kind of perfectly perpendicular to our hips? Not really. It's actually really uncomfortable. If you try to stand and have your feet completely perpendicular to your waistline, it's actually kind of uncomfortable. I'm intentionally doing it right now. and my knees kind of feel like there's this weird pressure on them, and it doesn't feel natural. How do we naturally want to stand? Feet to feet, right? We pop and rotate our ankles out some to make a foot like this, right? Now, in doing so, visually, what does that create? And I guess kinetically, we do the exact same thing here on good old Mother Earth, right? By having our feet out at an angle like this, what does it produce? A wide platform, okay? A stable, wide platform for us to shift our weight around on, right? So, Jepson, let's just run an experiment real fast. Would you mind grabbing the foot effector down there on your character and rotate it along the y-axis? Oh, now we have to go to the bathroom. Go the other direction, go the other direction. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Now change over to the move tool. And move it. Oh, which one do you have selected here? Oop, there it is. Move it out just we've gone a little too much, but it's beginning to look. Move it in towards the center of the character. Yeah, now it's beginning to look a little bit more realistic. Okay, we never have our feet perfectly perpendicular to the plane of our hips. They're almost always bloop, out of the side. Gives us a nice wide, stable platform for us to jump up and down, emote, and of course walk down the street. You'll see this again for our homework this week as we start to kind of put in these small details that make our walks feel a little bit more real. The angle of our feet is a critical detail. Thank you, Jepson. Great job. All right, who else we got here? We got an army of people over here. Whose is this one? Whose is this? Devin, what you got? All right, take us on a tour.
This one, I got inspiration from a ballet pose.
I love it. It's a great pose, too. Look at his hips, his head, and his ankle. This feels very stable, like this character is not going to fall over because the center of mass is perfectly lined up along those three features. I can almost draw a perfect straight line. Almost draw a perfect straight line. Like I said, if you're off ever so slightly, that's not going to break the bank. What about the other two? Good. Yeah, let's go to the dude that's like way leaned back. Oh my gosh, this is Neo from the Matrix, right? Yeah. Now, this is the cool thing about animation is we can break all the rules and we get to stop time for a brief second. But even in that one little kind of nanosecond, we have to be very mindful of our center of mass, okay? Now, this is in itself not a bad place to go. This character is seconds from falling over. This character is falling over in this pose, right? But at the very least, we have the hips, the knees and the ankle. I mean, they're starting to play together. The hips and the ankle here kind of help establish. You really can't do. You can do that a little bit, but I'm not super flexible, so maybe I'm the wrong person to be demonstrated. But you have to have a rock solid core. You have to have like the abs of an Olympic athlete to do that, right? That's an extreme pose. I'm happy that you pointed the head down. That's awesome, right? What about your other guy in the back? All right. Rock and roll. I love it. Great job. Now, for those of you that don't know, Devin, how did you get all these characters in one scene?
So all I did was I just imported the same project.
The same project file into the existing project file. It's a great way to create an army of characters that all populate one spot. Right. You got it. Great job. Great job. I love it. Let's see. Yes. Who's this one? Yes. Well done. Okay, now you're showing off. Right. But seriously, Bronco, great job. Great job. It's still rendering too. All right. Very cool. Great job. Now, one of the things that I'm looking at here, and he's actually doing a really great job. If you look down here at the feet, really great example of the power of rotating those toes out. Okay? Whenever we're standing, we want to create a nice, wide, stable platform so we don't fall over. Rotating the feet is the first step in doing that. Great job. I love it. All right, let's keep cruising here. See if there's some other good representatives. Who's this one? This one's fun. Who's this one? Oh, no, who's the... Keith, great job. So is your character jumping at the moment? Yes. Great. Because the laws of gravity change a little bit when we're in the air, right? A lot of these ideas that we were just talking about stability and center of mass, completely are thrown out the window once we're in air, right? Because once we kind of leave planet Earth, then our feet and our body do a lot of really great and strange things. Can you rotate around to the side a little bit? Let's see how your spine's working. Yeah. Yeah, awesome job. One of the things that I would recommend that everyone continue to be aware of as we're posing our character, symmetry. Okay? If you look at the feet down here, look at the arms and the hands, they're very, very similar to one another, right? By breaking the planes up and by making the left half different from the right half in an extreme way, we're going to create a pose that has much more depth in it, visual interest, and just believability. Okay? If I was to jump up in the air, would it be likely that I'd be able to pose myself perfectly like that? Pretty unlikely. Okay? So we want that asymmetry kind of adds a human element into all of our poses. So be mindful of that as we start in on this idea, on this journey of posing all of our characters in 3D. Start with the feet. Which foot in your imagination, Keith, is the last left the ground? So if we're like jump in the air, the lowest one, okay, start there. Okay, if that's going to be the one that left the ground, yeah, see how much better that already is? Just that one small change has made it much better. Now go to the green foot, the other foot, grab it and rotate it so that the toe is pointing more towards screen right. Woo! Even there, it's better. It's feeling a little bit more dynamic. We don't have to go super extreme. We're just trying to break up the planes. If all of the lines in our character are basically following each other, we're going to flatten the image pretty quickly, right? But going in and having one toe point down, the other toe kind of point at camera, it's making it different. It's just enough of a plane change to break up the, oh yeah. Yes, 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 yes. Now we're getting there. You've kind of broken your ankle, but if you rotate it out towards screen right, it's going to help it feel a little less compressed. And rotate along the Z-axis too. Ooh. Keep going, 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 keep going. There we go. Yes, yes, yes. That's better. Okay? These small little changes make a big impact on our poses, right? By breaking up these planes and making an asymmetrical pose, it now starts to feel a little bit more real, a little bit more believable. Great job. Who's this one? Who's this? If Hanny has it, wonderful job. Wonderful job. This is fantastic. What's happening here? He or she's about to fall over. Yeah. It feels like the entire mass is being pulled down, all because of the head. It has everything to do with the head. Okay? How heavy is our head? Quite heavy, and I think it's like 20 pounds or something like that, maybe even more. I mean, this is a pretty big appendage on sitting on top of our tiny little neck, right? Our heads are heavy. Our brains are much heavier than you think they are, right? And there's a tremendous amount of water in there, right? I got big ears, so that's going to make my head heavier. Not really. But our heads are heavy, so a lot of our balance problems come from that appendage, from our head. So be mindful of how far you're tipping and rotating your head back in relationship to the hips, okay? Yeah, this character feels like, poof, it's about to fall over, right? We're trying to find some balance. A counterbalance would probably help. Instead of having both arms kind of back, if an arm and like another leg was out in front, that would serve as the counterbalance, right? Suggesting that the weight of the leg and the weight of the arm was I can't do it, but counterbalancing the head being so far back below the hips. Feet's feet. Do that 10,000% better, just simply going like that. Yeah. Or on one of them. This one's kind of cool. I dig that pose there. But that one over there, if I'm doing this, yeah, naturally my foot is automatically pointed that way, right? Yeah. Right? I think it helps to get up and do these poses. We kind of seem silly, right? But it helps. Huh? We need a big mirror, right? Yeah. You get over that after a while, right? I've gotten over it. I'm so used to standing up here and dancing around like a monkey, okay? A monkey in a little hat that I don't think twice about it. If you were to go into a traditional animation studio, most animators have a mirror on their desk. Yeah. Sometimes even, now we have cell phones that can do it, but a lot of times they'll have video cameras available for animators to record their actions so we can break it down and see how people are moving and what have you. It really helps. Reference is key. It really is. It's not cheating at all. We want to use these reference images in these films to help, kind of lead our decision-making process. As animators, we need to be observers. So observe.
It's kind of funny when I was messing with the first walk cycle to try and get it to look good in the front. I set up the camera and recorded myself walking.
Yeah, it helps. It really helps. It really helps. All right. So let's jump back over into Maya and start looking at how. Thank you, everyone. We're going to continue doing this. This is a great little warm-up exercise for us every single week. You can keep or delete these. It does not matter to me. You will not be turning them in. But this week for a homework exercise, we're going to continue our walk cycle, okay? And we're going to rebuild our walk cycle from the ground up. So you are required to use the Boney rig, the Boney Man rig, the ultimate Boney rig that I've supplied to you and linked on the assignment sheet. So please use this character, okay? In doing so, it forces us to start over from scratch. Animation is an experience-based art form. So we want to take the experiences from our first draft of this and apply it to the second draft. What were some of the common bits of feedback that everyone got in the class today? Hips, right? The hips are they are the central hub of this entire animation. So spend some time really focusing on that rise and fall. And then, of course, naturally, we're also going to talk about the twist here in a little bit. Because once we throw arms and shoulders in there, that twist and that belt line, there's a reason I wore a belt today. Not only to hold my pants up, but so you guys can see how our hips change their orientation as we walk, okay? So we'll talk more about that belt line. And then the rotation along the spine and the movement of the spine is something that we'll want to look at as well, okay? And last, we got to talk about the melon on top of our head. The arms are not as difficult as you think they are. The arms will kind of take care of themselves, but if we can focus more on the spine and the shoulders, the second part of our walk cycle gets a little bit easier, right? The head being the final component of that, right? Because when we start rotating our hips and start doing like this, the last thing we want to do is have our eyeballs be looking up and down like that. That doesn't serve a purpose, right? When we're walking down the street, do we look at the ground or look up, look at the ground and look up? No. Okay, as we do this, our head is kind of doing this change. I'm super exaggerating because no one walks down the street doing this, right? Maybe a bird, okay? No one does that. But we need to rotate our head and animate our head so it looks as though we're like we spotted a target and we're walking toward that target no matter what, okay? That we can see, we're not losing that target from our gaze, okay? And then lastly, I want to encourage you guys to add a little character into your walk cycle, okay? So we start with this formula, but then we can layer on some character elements on top of it, right? This is where we get to invent and have fun. This is where we get to really truly bring out the uniqueness of our character through their gait from their walk cycle. So I'm going to allow a lot of freedom in how this looks at the end. There are some building blocks that we need to be mindful of, but we're here to make characters. We're not here to follow formulas and patterns. So invent, create, okay, on top of this wonderful framework of the system that we've been looking at. Okay, let's jump back over to Maya for a second and start looking at a couple ideas. Okay, and I can't animate this entire thing in 30 minutes. I'm not going to try, but there are some ideas in here that I want you to look at. Okay? Specifically, let's look at the hips, because we can start to plot and focus a tremendous amount of energy from the hips itself. One thing that I noticed and I learned about this rig during lab today was that it has some wonderful animation or display layers associated with it. Okay? And at times, this can be a big help, right? When you're working on the legs, you just turn the visibility of the arms off. Sometimes having things at the T-pose here or swinging side to side just gets in the way visually of the edits and the creation of the walk cycle downstairs. So you're not deleting anything by turning this visibility icon on and off. Okay, same with the body. Now I'm not entirely sure why you'd want to do that, or the pelvis, but you can start to cycle certain body parts on and off to make it just easier for you to see. Okay. However, one thing, cautionary tale. A lot of folks will probably do this, which is in itself not a bad place to begin. Okay. On this rig, we have two different effectors for our hips. Let me turn on the body section so you can see those two different effectors. Of course, we have this big ring down here at the bottom, but on the inside of that big ring, we have this little funny shape. I don't know what you want to call it. Okay. Now, these behave and act very, very differently from each other. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Here's the outside ring. Fire off the move tool and up and down here, okay, which is pretty great. So when you grab the big ring, as you guys were just experimenting with, it's going to move the hips, but it's also going to move the entirety of the spine, okay? So the shoulders are going to come down with the hips. An excellent place to put a whole series of keyframes to naturally establish the bob of our character, right? Great hint, okay? However, and I'm going to hit undo, this inside ring does something very similar, but do you guys experience see that? Great place to do a little squash and stretch, and that's one of its reasons why it's there, is to get that squash and stretch, okay? Really what this is designed to do, in addition to squash and stretch, is to be able to rotate the hips without rotating the shoulders. Okay? And that has its role and its place inside of our animation sequence, which we're about to discover. Larger point being, if you're changing the display layers here, you turn off the body, what do we lose access to? That big ring on the inside. So if we were to go in and grab this little thing in here and place all of our animation keyframes to establish the rise and fall, we're probably like, yeah, this is looking great, this is looking awesome, until we turn the body back on and everything's been stretched out. Okay, so just be mindful that both of those control points have very different roles inside the rig. Okay, I don't want you guys to spend a tremendous amount of time animating it only to find that it's broken. A couple other things in terms of animation that are important to point out. Once again, these foot controls provide us with a tremendous amount of extra information over there in our channel box. Okay, so specifically, check this action out. This is pretty cool. So specifically, okay, we've got stretch. And that's not doing anything at the moment, but knee lock. Yeah, so we can pop that out. The foot tilt, these are the ones that I wanted to show you guys. We can roll our feet. Okay, that's pretty cool. Heel ball, a little bit easier than the last one, the last rig that we were working with. Okay, toe up, as you might imagine, and down, and then ball swivel. This is just a rotation. So it's a different place to rotate, because we can rotate around the ball of the foot, and then if we just simply move the rotation, see how it rotates around the heel? Okay. So ball swivel is a nice alternative. Yeah.
What are the arrows?
Yeah, the arrows. The arrows allow us to change from IK to FK. It's a switch. Do you guys remember the conversation we had last week about the difference between inverse kinematics and forward kinematics? Inverse kinematic allows for kind of like piston type movements up and down. Okay, most of our leg movements are just going to be doing like a piston, up and down, right? And it requires applying inverse kinematics to your rig. Requires some additional kind of rigged elements in there to make that piston type movement work pretty cleanly. okay? But it's very limiting, IK. Really good for, you know, when we're doing this. This is about it. Great, this is perfect for IK, okay? When your legs are just doing this, which they are for the majority of the animations that we're doing, IK is purpose-built for that. However, we can change it, right? Arms are often the opposite. And some of you guys were kind of running into this wall during lab, right? With all the arms, how do I do this with my arms? Yeah, and am I moving my wrists? No, what am I doing? I'm rotating my elbows, right, to get this. And then if I wanted to pose it, you know, the shoulder differently, I'd rotate my elbow this way, or my shoulder down, shoulder forward, rotate elbow forward, right? The arms need to be big circular movements all the time, right? Because, you know, we want to be able to do this with our arms. I can't do this with inverse kinematics. I can only do this type of motion with forward kinematics, which relies exclusively on the rotation channels of the rigged elements that we're looking at, right? On this rig, we can switch them, okay? We can swap the IK for the FK, and we do that with these little arrows in the back. See how it says switch IK, FK up there, okay? Maya works off of, this kind of shows its age to a certain degree. Maya is yes and no's are ones and zeros, okay? So right now it's 0, which is off. If I was to turn it on, just put in a simple 1 in here. Now, whoa, look. The entire rig changed and updates, which is pretty rad, okay? Instead of having that big, you can actually see it down here at the bottom. Instead of having this thing, which is the IK handle for the heel, now we have independent controls, that's rotation. So that rotates, and that rotates, okay? So it's just a different way of working. Personally, I would leave FK off or IK on. I think you're going to find it to be a much more fluid system, especially for the legs. Depending on what you're doing for the arms, switching over to IK is a good idea, right? So if you're having like a barbell above your head and you're just trying to do this, that's an IK movement, right? Because your arms are doing that piston type extension, right? This, IK, right? But if I wanted to throw a javelin, FK, okay? Because we need a tremendous amount of rotation to get what I'm after, okay? Or baseball. We're going to be doing baseballs here in a couple weeks. So that's what the arrows do. Okay. Let's get back to work here. Oh, one other thing. Some of you guys also discovered this as well. On this rig up here at the top, this is such a wonderful, wonderful control locator for the rig, okay? Because this guy up at the top, if we start to rotate it, starts to really establish the plane of our shoulder blades, okay? Because our shoulder blades, we kind of rotate together. It's very difficult to rotate one shoulder blade, I can't imagine how, but keeps them together for the most part. And I like that one. I've used that one a lot. Can pop the chest out. Now we're happy. Curl it in. Now we're very sad. Very sad. Now I'm a zombie. Or throwing up.
Or hunchback.
Or hunchback, yeah. Okay. So let's get back to the business at hand, which is the hips, okay? As I mentioned before, the hips are really the entire motor of our walk cycle, okay? It all begins and ends with the hips. And here's a couple ideas that we can establish pretty quickly, okay? This outside ring, this does a really great job of just translating up and down, okay? Animation is only as hard as we make it. It's probably a good idea to copy and paste some frames, okay, some values in between the frames. We can do that. That's part of our workflow. We don't have to do it all visually, okay? So for example, I'm just going to go in and start keying down the hips, okay? So that's going to be my contact on frame 1. So if I go to here to frame 4, this is the down pose, maybe right in there. There's 7, here's the passing right about there. 10 is the peak. I like to go a little bit past on the peak. And then, of course, down here on 13, it should be the exact same value that we plugged in on frame 1. So I'm going to copy that, -2, go over here to frame 13, paste it back in, and now we have the same.